Ladies and gentlemen, this is my weekly commentary. I'm going to be talking about a couple of different topics. Now, we know that there are countries with populations where the old completely outnumber the young. And you may not see it now, but it's going to have a huge economic impact on those countries. Number one, that means there's not enough young people to fill the positions that are open. And it's going to have that chain reaction because the younger populations are not producing enough babies. That means a few decades from now, there's not going to be enough money flowing through the economy. It's going to be less taxpayer money. It's going to be less people buying from the markets on Earth. And economically, a lot of these countries are not prepared for that sort of thing. The low birth rate is a global phenomenon. It's happening everywhere in large numbers. So there's fewer children and a large amount of elderly people on the planet in many, especially the Western nations. And that's why they're calling it a demographic time bomb. And here in the United States, they're now admitting they have fallen below the fertility rate. The average American life expectancy is dropping because of the opioid epidemic and the suicides and everything that's impacting the younger generation. So all of this is happening simultaneously. You have the old population dying out, the suicides and drug addiction that's going through the roof, and you have this low birth rate. So we will start seeing this, and we know they're being dishonest about population numbers. We already know that. But it should still show up in some kind of capacity in the US Census, especially over these past upcoming decades. You should see less and less of the elderly and less births, as they start dying out. They'll go through their natural die out without really being replaced. Now because there are so many open positions on the labor market right now. I have read a couple of stories where they're asking many of these retirees to work longer, if they would just work a few more years, because they're doing positions that are very difficult to fill. So, not surprising. I mean, things are changing rapidly, and there's no stopping it at all. I was looking at another article, guys, and I'll probably do this article for tomorrow, where they are closing maternity wards from hospitals are shutting down because there are simply not enough people coming in and using the maternity wards anymore. It's less and less people going to use, any type of childbirthing at some of these hospitals where they have shrinking demographics. So they are closing many of those facilities because they're hardly being used now. So you should know that's going to happen, especially when they had to close down the chain of Toys R Us because there's not enough people with babies. People are buying less toys. It's not a lot of children in America like it used to be decades ago. So everything is going to have an impact from this shrinking population. And it's something all of these nations have to be prepared for. Africa right now has a booming population. That is a nation that a lot of people, I was listening to Dr. Mumby, and everybody is moving to Africa. The Chinese, the people in the Western nations, they're all moving there. And she was talking about Cuban doctors have been brought into Kenya. So everybody is running to Africa right now. There's a reason for that. Everybody need to have their eyes open about that. All right. Now, my next topic, I want to talk about the recent red tide that happened in Florida, where all of this sea life has been washing up on beaches. And, they're saying, are humans to blame? Of course they are. Of course they are. They're blaming red tide and the lack of oxygen in the water as causing this red tide. So everything, so fish, catfish, pufferfish, snook, trout, all of these different creatures, from crabs, eels, manatees, dolphins, turtles, all washing up, ladies and gentlemen, on the beaches. They said the smell is, I can imagine how bad the smell is. So, are we surprised? No. These scenes have almost become normalized. And then you have the effects of Fukushima, which has gone worldwide. I don't even eat any of the seafood anymore. I gave up on that a while back. But I know they're still going to sell this stuff because it's big business in this country. So they're saying that many of the organisms around the world can cause harmful algae blooms, and that is known as red tide. Okay. And this has hit Florida over the recent weeks. And they're saying that this was probably one of the largest ones they've seen. It actually stretched across the coast 100 miles. 100 miles. Can you imagine driving 100 miles and seeing tons and tons of beach life? So it says right here, the latest bloom stretches around 100 miles along the coastline, miles offshore, often pushed into concentrated patches by winds and currents. So once again, I just don't know. They can't really clean this up, y'all. It is so far gone. The ocean life dying. We've been seeing this even long before the red tide. You can't even say it's the red tide anymore. It's all of the radiation in the water. And Japan has never done anything to clean up Fukushima, and it's bad. Every time one of these nuclear accidents happen, it usually has a global effect. And the outcome of it, you're going to see all of these dead animals from the ocean, just like we did see the same thing during the oil spills. It's nothing new. And as a result of all of these die-offs that you see, the ecosystem is collapsing. So not only do you have your ocean life suffering, this is having a major, major impact on farming and taking a lot of profit out of the farming. Things are not growing the same in this world. A lot of plants are not producing the kind of yields that they used to produce even a decade ago. So you have your food chain completely impacted by this. Farming is not the same, and you can tell. Anytime you pick up articles and you see millions of dollars in crops that are rotting in the country because of the lack of labor. Now there's a lot of farms that are leasing part of their land or even selling their land altogether because they're tired of struggling every single year trying to get labor out there to help. You're really taking a chance on the immigrants. They may show up and then all of a sudden, and like many of these farms where the food is cropping, they disappear. It's not a reliable labor force. A lot of them leave for a various amount of reasons. It's not always ICE. Sometimes they just simply don't like the way they're getting treated, and they will just up and altogether just leave. And then that farmer is pretty much stuck with vegetables and fruit that they simply can't harvest on their own. So now with the ecosystem, what's throwing it off? It's many things. Number one, the world's coral reefs are disappearing. And I did a story on that, but it's been a long time ago about the coral reefs that are dying. Okay. And then you have the Antarctic regions where it's less snow, where it used to be once covered in snow. There are lots of areas that now have less snow coverage because the sea levels are rising, from all of the melting icebergs and everything that are there. Temperatures are a lot higher all over the globe. It's not just in certain parts, the entire globe is heating up. So when the globe heats up, of course, it's going to have an impact on everything from the vegetation, the ocean life, marine life worldwide, and also the food chain is going to be impacted by it. So you have rising populations, growing incomes, but you are struggling with warmer climates, even Canada and Russia, China, places where they normally have cooler temperatures. They're struggling with agriculture in those areas, as well as across Europe, where they have experienced a 40-year drought. Okay. And it's a big reason why you see China running into Africa to grow the food for their country. They're doing this, ladies and gentlemen, because they simply can't grow crops that well in China anymore. That's why they're making a beeline to Africa. And you see them doing agriculture all over the place in that country. There's a reason why all of these Western European nations, the US, Russia, China, are all piling in, and Canada too, all piling into Africa. Africa got some of the most fertile land on the entire planet and the richest soil. If everything was so great everywhere else, forget about what people say. Watch what people do. They're all going into Africa not only for the resources, but that's their means of survival. They're not going to be able to survive. Many of these countries do not have enough resources to survive without Africa. You can say whatever you want about that place. I dare you to live without it. You won't be able to do it. You wouldn't make it a month. You wouldn't make it a month without Africa. So we are seeing many climate changes go on. Now, here in New Jersey, I have seen some heavy rains this season that I haven't seen in a long time. And we have days that are just really strange. We'll have a day that the sun will be out, and then all of a sudden, you look up 5 minutes later, it's all cloudy, and then buckets start falling out the sky. And then it'll clear up, the sun will come out, and it will do that off and on all day long. All day long. The sun will come out, it'll get cloudy, dump a whole bunch of rain, then the sun will come out, and it'll repeat like that several times in one day. You can tell things are definitely changing. Now you have a heat wave over in Europe. We have these hot temperatures here in the US. And you see the drought all over in Europe. And you're going to pay the price for all of this in the market when they start marking up food and everything. You see all of this happening. And ladies and gentlemen, you see a lot of despair going on in farming alone. You have all of the farmers in France, the dairy farmers that are committing suicide. You have the suicides going through the roof here in the US among farmers. And farming is just not what it used to be. Agriculture is still a good business. I mean, people got to eat, but they are not even making the money that they used to make 15, 20 years ago. So economies are falling. And you can see, I mean, just looking at daily news every day, you're seeing the effects of it every single day. Now, more abuse on our ocean. Some of you might have saw the stories that came out where tons and tons of garbage washed up in the Dominican Republic and Haiti back at the end of July. They have been dumping in the oceans for many, many decades. You know, the world is completely out of balance. And what happens when people have waste, especially companies, corporations, hospitals, they hire waste removal and they take it straight to the ocean and dump it all in. What kind of items? Plastics, trash, clothing, hospital waste, you name it. It's all going in the ocean. All of it. And of course, it's going to float somewhere. You'll hear about this sort of thing happening off the shores. And a lot of times the islands will get hit, you know, places in the Caribbean will get hit with this massive amounts of trash floating up. And it's dangerous, you know, because you have children, you know, like in this picture here, you have children that are walking through in this garbage and sewage and stuff. It's disgusting. And sometimes we forget about Haiti. And even in Haiti, this washed ashore. I know they keep talking about the Dominican Republic, but it actually washed up in more places than the Dominican Republic. But, you know, the powers that be, they don't care about this kind of stuff. In fact, they're the ones causing it. And they don't care where this stuff goes after it's dumped in the ocean. And, you know, of course, many of these places, they depend on tourists coming and spending their money. So they have to now get out there and clean this up, which they are doing right here. You see them in the orange jumpsuits and they're trying to clean it all up. You know, you can't have tourists coming to your island and it's loaded up with just garbage. And you can still see it right here, um, where they're just trying to get as much up as possible from these beaches because, you know, their revenue comes from a lot of the tourists that come there. It's a lot of garbage floating up to your island, and it just completely spoils the entire environment there. I mean, there's nothing they can do but try to clean it up. What else can they really do? It's just so much trash. But see, this is what happens, ladies and gentlemen, when you don't care about the world that you live in. You don't give a damn, you know, and you also got to think about the amount of ocean life this debris will kill. It will kill the ocean life. You know, this is why you'll hear about, every now and then, you'll hear about a whale and it'll have like plastic bottles in its stomach and stuff because of all this crap out here. It's now interfering with them feeding in the ocean. But, ladies and gentlemen, tell me what you think. I think it's sad. to watch our world become such a big dumping ground. And the people that are in charge of it just simply don't care. They don't care. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.